Alright everybody, I'm back doing a Daredevil episode 9 review, and it was the last episode of season 1 and it was pretty good, had some good action in, so it was a bit of a long one. It was on for an hour, so I'll have to get on with the review on that. Right, so starts off where you see Bullseye for last episode looking down his rifle sight and that, and then it goes to a 1 year ago sort of thing where it's in a sort of psycho ward where you see Mrs. Fisk is talking to Bullseye, and she says she's got him released from the psycho ward, but she needs a favour from him and that, and she needs him to kill Benjamin Cartro. Now, it was some dude that was doing a case against one of sort of employees, and she wanted Bullseye to kill him and his lawyer, who was Foggy Nelson and that. And she says Fisk is not a part of it, but Bullseye says that Fisk is always a part of it. But he signs the release form anyway to sort of agree to the job. And then there's a recap of seeing Matt take a bullet for Fisk. Then Matt's in hospital and he's in a bed and that, but not seriously injured because he comes round and that. And his bed and Foggy too tell him that Bullseye is still out there and that they didn't catch him, which is not the news you want to tell someone when they're recovering. But anyway, and Fisk, he says to Mrs. Fisk that he knows what she did, as in hired Bullseye to kill Foggy, probably, and the dude, and now he knows that Bullseye, because he got caught and that, he was expecting to get pulled out and helped by Mrs. Fisk, but because Mr. Fisk put him into the cells of general public and that, that's when I think he got a bit sort of revengeful and wanted to kill Fisk for that sort of thing. Well, then Matt, he tells his bed and Foggy too about Foggy's court case and that he works out like he was going to win it and that. Then Fisk says he can move billions, where you find out later on he can move billions of whatever he wants because the port, docks that they're in, apparently it's a free port, so it's not under New York or USA restrictions, or so they can do what they like, sort of thing. Then Matt tells his bed again Fisk is not what he appears to be, but she leaves and that. Then Fisk, he's got a meeting with his task force and his PR sort of team, and he wants every vigilante hunted down and that, and he wants to shut every bridge and tunnel or barricade it off sort of thing, so no one can escape the city, because he's wanting Bullseye and that. But the PR bird says it's too much without a severe public sort of endangerment and that, where it's just Fisk's life was at um, danger. Well, Fisk, he says, like, he acknowledges her opinion, but he still sends the task force cops out to hunt vigilantes and to, like, board off all the, like, ways out of there and that. Then Fisk asks his PR dude after they're all gone, because he tells him to stay behind, sort of thing, because he wants to know about Matt's condition in the hospital and that, where the PR dude says Matt's okay and that, he's sort of like recovering and that, where he says it's going to make it complicated with the situation with Matt as he saved Fisk's life and that. But Fisk disagrees and that, because he suggests it would look less suspicious if Matt would die from his injuries he suffered, which is basically telling his PR dude, henchman, sort of like to go kill Matt, which, spoilers, he tries to do. Well, yeah, and then claims that a dead hero is better than an alive vigilante, which the PR dude, he sort of like nods his head, knowing what to do. He's took the hint, and then he leaves. Then Foggy 2, she says that she needs a serious conversation with Matt after all. Like, he's feeling well and that. And then she leaves. Well, Fisk says to the PR bird to send anyone who is not on board with his plans, that they can just leave. Well, then the chief commissioner there, they talk about Fisk's force. Well, the commissioner says like Fisk force is special task force cops and that, and he can't control them and that, and that Fisk is planning to shut the city and that, to catch like Bullseye. Well, then Matt senses someone like in the hospital, where you see the PR dude in the hospital floor, sort of outside of Matt's room and that. Well, then the chief commissioner says he's going to a federal law, like, to talk about Fisk and to say like he's going well out of his jurisdiction of power and that. And he says like Fisk is still kingpin and that, and says he needs like witnesses. So the PR bird asks when this hearing is, where he says it's the next day, where she says she can't make it, but she will put in a word, as in she will testify against Fisk. Well, then the lights go out, as in a power stage, where it looks like, because you see the PR dude who goes into Matt's room, where it looks like it's been set up, so he's got the best opportunity to take out like Matt in the dark, sort of thing. Well, as he goes in, Matt's not there. He's left. Where you see Matt walking down sort of like the hallway and that. And with him being blind, he's probably not too afraid to walk that fast in the dark. So yeah, and then the like PR dude, he abandons the assassination mission because it's like, yeah, shit, yeah, better look next time. And then Matt finds a room and he sits in a couch and that, and he can sense someone's there, so he says, "You're the last person I thought would be here." Where you see the person he's talking to, who says the Punisher, where Punisher calls Matt an arsehole as there is nowhere to make some coffee for him. Says he got a phone call. Spoilers, it was from the gingerbread. You find that later on. And he's there to get Matt out alive. And then he asks why Matt took a bullet for Fisk. Matt says that's a good question because he doesn't really know why he did that, but he did. Then Matt senses the task force sort of cops arriving and that, where Matt says to Frank, "Yeah, let's get out of here," sort of thing. Where then the task force team sort of like enter a door and like search the room. Where great fight scene this Daredevil, he bursts down out from a like ceiling sort of window roof sort of, and like gets in there, gets the element of surprise on the guards and that, and then just starts beating the crap out of them. Where some good moves and that, this is where it's like, yeah, if every episode had like fight scenes like this in it, it'd be like, yeah, not much complaining, but they didn't. But this one did though, because I think they know they had to get some good action scenes to get people interested for season sort of 2. So, well, then like the Punisher, he enters in from the outside and starts kicking ass. Like the Daredevil, he's kicking ass and that. Some good fight moves and that. Then like Punisher shoots a gun out of a task force cop's hand and that. And then like Daredevil is kicking ass, but he gets injured. I think he gets shot in the like side, but the action was kicking ass and that. Didn't really, and I was like too busy having to do other things that I didn't go back to see exactly how he got. But he gets injured and that, because then he takes a little bit of a break after kicking the dude's ass and that. And then Punisher, he's shooting through a wall because like the cops have got him like sort of pinned it sort of thing. Where he takes him out and that. And then he jumps over a table where he just really starts just killing these task force cops and that. Where Daredevil, he like bats one of the cops and that. And then Punisher, he pretty much just finishes off most of the fucking cops and that. And then Daredevil, he throws one of these cops onto like a flat screen TV that's on the wall, mounted onto the wall and that. And then uh, one of the cops shoots at Punisher, but Daredevil, he sort of like spears his hand with his sort of like harpoon sort of gadget that he's got. And the like cop's hands like pinned to the wall and that, where Punisher, where whoever writing this, I don't know if the fucking bullet shell would have gone that far. It'd have been more near the copper, but maybe the people who write this think that the casing goes with the bullet. Well, it doesn't, but anyway. Punisher, he picks up the bullet casing, which turns out to be the Punisher skull sand one, where he knows it's not his bullet because he doesn't have like special ones like that. And he shows it to Matt, where then Matt questions the cop about him being the one that who killed White Tiger, because apparently this cop's the only one that's using the skull symboled Punisher on his bullet casing. So yeah, he's proper like give the game away there. And so yeah, well, um, Daredevil, he questions like the dude and that, where he's pretty much admits like yeah, he sort of did kill White Tiger, where this makes Matt rage and that, and he wants to kill the dude, but instead he just knocks him out and that, where then Matt takes a break sort of thing, and he has a bit of a reflection moment on the past good times he had with White Tiger and that, where he got him off on a murder charge and all that shit. And then he goes back to where you see Matt. And Punisher says, like, Matt's a pussy, so you can't kill him, but if he wants, sort of thing, Punisher will kill the cop. Where Matt says no, and Punisher then shoots another cop that's all on the floor, shoots him dead and that, and comments about like having to kill these like task force cops and that. Well, Matt argues with Frank and that, says like the Punisher's taking it too far, sort of thing, and then he hears around a grenade, but the explosion's more like a C4, but he hears like a grenade getting dropped or like triggered anyway, where he gets Frank of that, and then they jump out of the top of like a 5-story building and that, where they land on top of a car, where I think Daredevil did use his sort of like cane to like swing across onto the car, so it wasn't a full jump from the top to the bottom. There was a bit of a swing of momentum which broke the fall and that. So they do survive okay. No injuries in that. And then like Daredevil and Punisher start to walk off, where a car pulls up and like it's the gingerbread and that, and they go back to like Frank's sort of place and that to get patched up and that, where the gingerbread tells Matt she phoned the Punisher to help him and that. Then Matt tells the gingerbread about Mrs. Fisk hiring Bullseye to kill Foggy, and the case he was working on and that, where she says the files are in a storage sort of unit where they can go look for them, where they ask Frank if he wants to join, but he says no, he's got shit to do and that. And a bit of a thingy where he has to get fucking the gingerbread to say thanks for helping fucking get Matt out of the hospital alive. But anyway, then the young PR dude is at this committee and he asks the like council sort of members because it's middle of the night session where emergencies called and he's asking them about the plans that Fisk has for the safety sort of streets initiative where he is going to be doing loads of shit that like but so they say yeah they know about it, but they say it's insane, ridiculous and that where the young dude he takes notes down and writes it in his little sort of notebook where the speakers in that sort of like ask like what you're doing sort of thing where the young dude says like Fisk wants to know what you're like thinking the council is going to do and that and says it's not going to be anything like they've got to worry about but and then he congratulates them for hiding like money in an offshore bank account and says Fisk is happy with their sort of like scheme that they pulled off and he wants to talk to them. So they pretty much know that like yeah, Fisk is got blackmail material on him and that. Because like yeah, the like PR dude and all, because he's there backing the young PR dude. He says like the office will contact him and that, and then the young PR dude is like saying that Fisk is expecting their full support, which basically means they're gonna do what Fisk tells them to do. And then there's riots are happening because yeah, the lights power's got gone down, and then a looter gets stopped by the cops and that. But he puts his hands up, but the cop shoots the looter anyway. And his partner's a bit like, oh, what were you doing? Sort of thing. Well, he sort of like gets the looter's hat, which, unless it was a balaclava, but it just looked like a hat. Well, he pulled it over his face and said, oh, yeah, well, he's not a looter, he's a masked vigilante, sort of thing. And then Matt and the Gingerbread look for Foggy's last case file, where bit of a like, oh, how you been? All bit of a, fuck the Lord. I can't tell. I ain't got time to talk about the love story shit. But anyway, well, Gingerbread, she finds like Foggy's last case file and that, and finds out that Foggy was going to argue that no crime was committed in New York or America as this Red Hook port where Fisk and Mrs. Fisk have their offices and docking port like place and that. It's a free port, which means there's no law. They can make up their own law. It's usually islands that are like off the coastal line of a country, and so if it's 2 or 3 miles out of that coastal line, it's considered as like your own sort of territory, and so you can make up your own rules and that. where then Matt realises that the Fisk can just launder money legally and all, and they can build their own city-state of like gambling and smuggling and other things that are against the law, but obviously not in a free port. Well, then Punisher, he hears on the walkie-talkie that these task force cops have lost the whereabouts of him and Daredevil, but here's the task force cops are going to hunt for any masked vigilantes on the port and that. Well, Punisher goes on his own hunt, where he takes out a cop, like ghosts him and that, and then comes up to a group of them, where one of them he ghosts the Punisher, where he puts a gun in the back of the Punisher's head, sort of thing. Well, Punisher disarms him in that, and then just starts shooting at the other coppers and that. And the cops want to talk to him, but Frank in no talking mood. Well, yeah, there's a good fight scene and all. I say 2 good fight scenes in like the last episode. It was like, yeah, if we're going to get a season 2, we need to have some good fight scenes. Well, he starts beating the shit out of cops and that sort of thing, where he's like stabbing them in the neck and that, and he stabbed one in the throat and that, and I think he even stabs a bird in a pussy. Crazy shit. It was going too fast and that, and I had to like take screenshots. So, but anyway, yeah, and then he like, proper like he's killing these cops and that, until well, he just like take out loads of, but until he gets shot in the back, sort of thing, top right shoulder, I think. Well, and then the sort of like old Frank Wells just give him a sort of beating. Then they get him on the floor and that for a good kicking, you know. And then at this stage, I think Frank probably passes out or gets knocked out, because the next scene you see he's sort of like recovering, sort of thing. But proper surround him and that, so yeah, you can't really see what happens. Well, then you see the PR Baird's phone is playing the conversation that she recorded with the Chief Commissioner, asking her to testify and that at the Supreme Court, sort of thing. Well, you see Fisk, and he's looking pissed off whilst he's listening to the recording and that. And then you see the PR Baird nearly crying and that, as she knows she's just grassed up the Chief Commissioner and that. So she's feeling a little bit guilty at this stage, I think. Well, anyway, yeah, the Chief Commissioner, he gets in his 4x4 or RV Land Rover or whatever it is. What the cops always drive. Well, anyway, he sees like it's not his normal driver and that, and then he sees like a tattoo, which means a tattoo of the Punisher sort of symbol. Well, it looks a bit like the Punisher symbol, so it means he's part of the task force sort of cops and that, where he says like, yeah, he's working for them now and that. And then it's where the Punisher's tied up and he's sort of like coming to consciousness and that. So that's why I think he got knocked out. Well, the task force cop says he's a big fan of Frank's and that. Says though that they lost a lot of cops because of Frank though, but still offers Frank to be part of their task force team. Then it goes back to where the chief commissioner is getting led into this room, and if I'd been the chief commissioner, when you see plastic covering all around a room, is usually because it's going to be a kill room. So, but anyway, that's through watching Dexter. But anyway, as he's walking into the room, he's talking to the PR dude, where he says, like, you won't get away with it and that. Well, Fisk tells the commissioner that he didn't do a good job and that, and he's got all these cops there and that to, like, tell him how bad of a... Well, they don't say how, but he makes out like they was going to tell him how bad of a job he did and that. Well, then Punisher tells these task force coppers that they're a bunch of clowns and that. Says that they're nothing like him, and then they don't have his pain and that. Well, then it goes back to where the chief commissioner realises Fisk is still Kingpin, where Fisk then just chops the chief commissioner in his throat, which gives the chief commissioner a very painful, shocking experience, where whilst he's like getting over the shock, Kingpin goes round to the back of him, and then with both of his fists just slams them down, both on his shoulders and that, which brings the commissioner down to his knees and that. Well, then it's back to Frank, where he says he wouldn't piss on them if there was on fire, which is the sign of, yeah, I'm not going to join your team. Well, the task force cop says he's sorry to hear about that, and then he gives sort of like the order for the other cops to just start punching Frank one at a time, though, you know, so like they don't get too grouped up. Well, then Fisk, he starts to crush the commissioner's head, says he's going to keep the city safe. Then the task force cop looks away as Frank is being punched in the face by the cops and that. And he's like walks off as Frank's getting punched in the face. And he sort of like starts to bleed from his mouth and that, so he spits it out, sort of thing. And taking it like a man. At one stage, he's saying like, you're hitting like a cyanide fucking bitch. Nah, he don't say that, but I'm paraphrasing. Anyway, well, gets back to where the commissioner's head is like still getting crushed by Fisk and that, and till it is crushed in, and there's a bit where he rips off his jaw and that, like really sadistically in that shit, where the sort of like cops and that are like gathered in the PR people, well, the PR dudes there, I don't know if like there's all, but they sort of like take a gasp where they're in a bit of shock or admiration, a bit of all sort of thing. But Fisk then asks if there's any questions, where there is no questions. Where then Fisk says, good. Job done. Well, I don't say job done, but... Well, anyway. Then the ginger bear, she talks. Oh, this bit is like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's get fucking Daredevil to get fucking all hyped up to take on Fisk, even though he's injured. But I'm sure, like, if he fucking gets frees the Punisher, him and the Punisher can take this. But no, she talks him out of it, sort of thing. She says like, fucking, you're injured and all this shit, and fucking says like it's not gonna work out and that you're gonna die and that. Says Matt's got to sort of like be a bit more smarter. He got to think about his health, sort of thing. Well then, yeah, he does take her advice because it's the next day sort of thing where the city's back to normal, or so you'd think, but there is more CCTV cameras. It sort of like seemed like, or they tried to make out well. Fisk then he's talking to Matt's bed where he makes her the commissioner of health or mental health, and so she's the mental health team leader now. So and she accepts him that. Well then Fisk he holds a TV announcement broadcast where he says like the power grid was disrupted and that. The chief commissioner has resigned, and he says like the street safe program is being rolled out for the public safety and that. That all vigilantes will be arrested on the spot. Yeah, the vigilante activity is now illegal, and there's a 8 p.m. curfew as New York City, he gets a bit serious, is under martial law. And then it goes to a bit where you see a young Matt in a window, and Matt's doing the dialogue over it, and he's saying about his accident and losing his sight, and then you see him in back modern day. And Max then says that a mask didn't save his life, but says he believed in the mask that saved his life. So yeah, well anyway. Then the gingerbread says like Foggy believed in Matt and that, says she does too, and gives Matt a kiss on the forehead. So a friend zone's kiss. They're not rekindling their love. Well anyway. Then Matt puts on his mask and like walks through into the bar where doing a like voiceover sort of thing. Matt says like he can't see his city, but he can feel it. And in his sort of like end dialogue speech that goes on for a little bit with some music going on. Yeah, he says like the system is corrupt and rotten, as like you see Mr. and Mrs. Fisk walking past these caged prisoners that they've like took, who's probably disagreeing with Fisk's plans. They're holding them against the will and that, because then you see sort of like Frank Castle, the Punisher, he's been held in one of them, where then you see Mr. and Mrs. Fisk eating dinner, happy with business and that. Then it goes to a bit where you see other people doing stuff and that, like viewers, where you see the task force cops with white tigers and he's looking a bit worried and all this shit. And then Bullseye, wherever he's like camping out, keeping his head down because he's on the run. And then you see like Frank Castle. And as Matt says, they can get their city back, sort of thing. He doing a like an uplifting speech. Then back in the bar, sort of thing, where then you see the bar from the outside. Then you see the bar from the inside from the outside, and then it ends for 40 seconds, because then people who didn't want to stay around to the end credits missed where you see Frank Castle, Punisher, and that he's in a cell, he's being guarded, where Punisher starts up a conversation with this guard. Says he sort of like appreciates the guard talking to him and that. And this must be like a few days, a week after, because Frank's now healed up from, unless like it could be the day, the next day, because how this been happening, injuries get like healed pretty quickly. But anyway, he's talking to the guard and that, and he says like he wants to shake his hand and that. Well, he sort of like goes to where there's a little hole thing so you can stick your hand through and give people the dinner and all that sort of thing. Where the guard goes up to shake his hand, where Frank, he sort of like crushes the guard's hands where he's pretty much in pain and that, and then grabs the guard's arm and starts pulling his arm through the cage, slamming the guard's head into the cage, then breaks the guard's arm, and then it sort of gets the keys where you hear Frank unlocking the cage, but then it ends. So yeah, that was episode 9, which, that's it, good fighting scenes. I'll be doing a sort of season full review, as in like my opinions on like what happened and that. Probably only like a 10 or 20 minute one game. But anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.